Welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, well, we have an exploration that takes something seemingly mundane and just completely flips it on its head.
Oh, absolutely.
Our mission today is to extract the most valuable insights from a June 2025 guide by Pixel Pulse Fashion. And it's titled, Mommy and Me Matching Custom Tees, Fabric Stamping, and Patchwork DIY Graphic Shirt. Now, I know what you might be thinking.
Right, like a weekend craft project with the kids.
Exactly. You lay down some newspaper, you buy a kit full of foam stickers and, way too much glitter, and you end up with something that basically lives on the fridge for exactly 3 days before mysteriously vanishing into the recycling bin.
Yeah, it's usually the definition of disposable entertainment. I mean, it serves a quick purpose, it keeps everyone occupied for an hour, and then the physical evidence of that activity is just quietly discarded.
But the source material we are looking at today really shatters that disposable craft paradigm.
It really does.
Instead of a messy, temporary distraction, this guide reveals a pretty fascinating intersection of streetwear fashion, developmental psychology, and the very specific chemistry required to make DIY apparel actually survive a modern laundry cycle.
Yeah, the laundry part is huge.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the stakes here are surprisingly high for anyone listening who wants to spend a Saturday doing something genuinely meaningful. According to the guide, for under $15 and about 90 minutes of your time, you can create a completely custom wearable piece.
Right.
And this piece has the potential to mean significantly more to your family than literally any high-end designer label you could buy off a rack.
To understand why a homemade t-shirt carries that kind of weight,
Hmm.
we really need to look at the psychology driving this specific movement, because the mommy and me matching trend is, it's far from new.
Oh, totally. It's been around forever.
Right. But the guide highlights a massive cultural shift that occurred post-2020. We really moved away from the hyper-curated aesthetic of simply buying identical mass-produced outfits just to snap a holiday photo for social media.
Yeah, that performative aspect really took a backseat to the desire for genuine, hands-on shared experiences.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is what developmental psychologists are observing in the wake of that shift. When children engage in collaborative, tactile craft activities with their parents, specifically projects that result in a functional item, they show measurably higher emotional security and creative confidence.
Wow.
Yeah, the core value isn't the cotton shirt itself. The value is actually neurological. It's the profound, anchoring sense of pride a child feels when they're physically wearing something they manipulated and, brought into existence with their own hands.
It's like cooking a meal from scratch together versus ordering takeout.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because when you order takeout, the focus is entirely on the consumption of the food. But when you spend an hour chopping and stirring, making a complete mess in the kitchen with a kid, the process itself becomes the product.
Exactly.
Even if the meal is a little burnt or the seasoning is way off, they absolutely devour it because it's theirs. They built it. But I do have to push back a little here on behalf of our listeners.
Sure.
Do children actually care about the physical clothes they are making? Or is this really just an activity driven by parents who want to curate a quirky, matching aesthetic for themselves?
Well, that is a highly relevant question to ask, especially in the age of social media.
Right.
But the source material actually addresses this directly through an anecdote from a mother named Rachel M. living in Nashville.
Okay.
She has a 7-year-old daughter. And 2 years ago, the two of them made matching shirts using a very basic potato stamping technique. Rachel notes that they have done dozens of extravagant crafts since then, the vast majority of which her daughter has completely forgotten.
Right, as kids do.
Exactly. But that 7-year-old still talks about the specific Saturday afternoon they spent making those shirts. The physical garment acts as a permanent, wearable anchor for the memory.
That is so sweet.
It is. She is incredibly proud of the results, even though Rachel readily admits the scamp designs are, quote, slightly lopsided.
See, the fact that they are slightly lopsided is the entire magic of the piece. I mean, you are never going to run into someone at the grocery store wearing your exact lopsided potato scamp design.
Right. It's impossible.
It elevates it from a generic garment to a one-of-a-kind artifact. So if the psychological payoff is that huge, how do we actually guarantee the physical shirt survives the process? Because the biggest trap you can fall into, according to the guide, happens before you even open a single bottle of paint.
Oh, absolutely. The base material is everything. The canvas dictates the survival of the art.
Right.
If you choose the wrong base shirt, your project is structurally doomed from the moment you start, no matter how good your technique is.
And the guide is incredibly strict about this foundational rule. Your base tee must be 100% cotton, or at the absolute minimum, a 90-10 cotton poly blend. You have to avoid synthetic fabrics like the plague.
The reasoning behind that rule comes down to pure chemistry.
Okay.
Fabric paint is water-based. For it to become a permanent part of the garment, it requires natural, porous fibers that it can actively sink into and bind with. Synthetic fibers like polyester or nylon are essentially spun plastics.
Right, they're basically plastic threads.
Exactly. They are hydrophobic. They actively repel the water-based paint.
It is like trying to paint a masterpiece onto a piece of wax paper.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
The paint has nowhere to absorb, it can't grip the surface, so it just sits there in a puddle on top. And the guide points out that this lack of absorption is the exact reason DIY shirts crack, peel, and fade into a blurry mess within just, 2 or 3 trips through the washing machine.
Furthermore, if you plan to incorporate iron-on patches into your design, synthetic fabrics introduce a completely different physical hazard. Synthetics frequently warp, shrink, or literally melt under the extreme high heat required to activate the adhesive on the back of a patch.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you definitely don't want to melt a shirt to your iron.
No, you don't. Cotton, on the other hand, is remarkably resilient and can withstand that intense thermal shock.
But simply buying a cotton shirt isn't the end of the preparation. You cannot just pull a fresh shirt out of a shopping bag and start stamping.
No, absolutely not.
The source mandates that you pre-wash the garment, and you must do it strictly without any fabric softener.
This is a vital, frequently overlooked mechanical step. When you buy a brand new garment, it is almost always coated with a substance known as sizing.
Sizing.
Yeah, sizing. It is essentially a starch-based chemical treatment applied at the factory to keep the clothes looking stiff, crisp, and wrinkle-free while they hang on the retail rack.
Ah, right, to make them look good in the store.
Exactly. But that sizing acts as an invisible, microscopic barrier. It prevents both the wet paint and the melted patch adhesive from ever making physical contact with the actual cotton fibers. You have to strip that barrier away with a harsh wash.
And the guide goes even deeper into the weave of the fabric, recommending a medium-weight cotton. Because if you use those trendy tissue paper thin tees, the paint simply bleeds straight through the front layer onto the back layer.
Yeah, you end up gluing the shirt to itself.
Right. Plus, patches are heavy. They need a fabric with enough structural integrity to hold them up without sagging. You also want to aim for light colors. Crisp white, soft heather gray, pale yellow. The lighter the canvas, the more those fabric paint colors are going to pop.
For listeners who want a shortcut to the right canvas, the guide actually highlights specific recommendations from Pixel Pulse's own lineup.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, for the adults, they suggest the classic funny graphic tee line in those lighter colorways. They point out that the 100% ring-spun cotton provides an incredibly smooth surface that gives a crisp, sharp edge to stamped designs. And for the kids, they point toward the retro graphic tee.
I found the customer review they included for that retro tee incredibly insightful.
Oh, the sensory one.
Yeah. A parent named Melissa T noted that her son has intense sensory issues and is highly particular about how his clothing feels against his skin. Because the ring-spun cotton on that specific tee is so soft, it has become one of the only shirts he will tolerate wearing.
That is so important.
If you have a child with sensory sensitivities, you know that is a massive victory because it completely defeats the entire psychological purpose of making a custom Mommy and Me shirt if the child refuses to wear it because the collar is scratchy or the fabric is stiff.
Yeah.
Comfort dictates utility.
That is a crucial point regarding the wearability of the final product. And before we move on to the actual application techniques, there is one brilliant, highly practical tip embedded in this section of the guide. Buy backup shirts.
Yes.
Buy 1 or 2 extra blank tees in each size.
That is the ultimate psychological hack for the parent. The fastest way to ruin a collaborative craft is for the parent to be stressed out about ruining the materials.
Exactly. Because the first time a child uses a fabric stamp, their hand might slip, the paint might smear, the placement might be completely off-center. If you only have one single shirt on the table, that inevitable mistake instantly spikes the stress levels in the room.
Right, suddenly everyone's tense.
But if you have a backup sitting right there, the mistake doesn't matter. The whole activity remains a light, low-stakes, joyful exploration. And if you nail it on the first try and don't use the backup, well, you simply have a high-quality blank tee for their closet, or a canvas ready for the next rainy weekend.
Okay, so we have our pre-washed, sizing-free, pure cotton shirts. We are totally stress-free because our backups are sitting on the counter. How do we actually transfer a design onto the fabric?
Right, the fun part.
This brings us to the mess-free fabric stamping technique. And here's where it gets really interesting. You do not need to drop $50 on specialized art supplies. Your kitchen pantry is already a fully stocked premium craft store.
The required tools are brilliantly accessible. We discussed the potato stamp briefly. You slice a potato in half, and crucially, you must let the exposed face dry for about 10 minutes before applying paint.
Why does it need to dry?
If you don't let it dry, the natural water inside the potato will dilute the acrylic binder in the fabric paint. That causes it to bleed into the surrounding threads. Once dry, you carve a simple shape into the flesh.
But the options extend far beyond root vegetables,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. You can wrap a block in bubble wrap to create a complex, repeating hexagonal texture. You can cut cheap kitchen sponges into organic flowing shapes like clouds or leaves. You can utilize wine corks to stamp perfect uniform little confetti dots all over the fabric.
But the absolute showstopper, the real aha moment from the source that made me want to try this immediately, involves an everyday apple.
I love this one.
If you take an apple or a pear and instead of cutting it vertically from the stem down, you cut it horizontally right through the equator, the seed core in the center reveals a perfect, natural, five-pointed star.
It is a stunning, naturally occurring visual trick, and it looks incredibly sophisticated when transferred to fabric.
There is a fantastic anecdote from a parent named Jennifer Kay in Seattle. She used this exact horizontal apple cross-section technique to create custom shirts for her daughter's third birthday party.
Oh, wow.
They stamped 3 different overlapping colors of these natural apple stars across the tees. Jennifer reported that other parents at the party were actively asking if the shirts were a high-end designer print.
That's amazing.
And the best part, her 3-year-old got to proudly announce to a room full of adults that she made the designer print herself.
Achieving a print that sharp requires a very specific, though easily mastered technique.
Walk us through it.
First, you must slide a piece of cardboard inside the shirt. That prevents any paint from bleeding through the front layer and staining the back. Next, you squeeze your fabric paint onto a flat palette, like a paper plate. You do not dip the stamp into the paint.
Right, that would get way too gloppy.
Exactly. Instead, you use a secondary sponge to dab the paint evenly across your stamp's surface, ensuring a thin, uniform coat. Then, you press the stamp firmly onto the taut fabric for exactly 3 seconds
Why 3 seconds?
to allow the cotton's capillary action to draw the paint in. And finally, you lift the stamp straight up without any twisting or dragging.
But let me play the ultimate devil's advocate for the listener right now. What if your enthusiastic 3-year-old doesn't lift it straight up? What if they smash the apple down, twist it around, and create an unrecognizable smeared blob? As a parent, you look at that and think you just ruined a perfectly good blank tee.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally view the concept of perfection in DIY projects. The guide actively and forcefully reframes this anxiety.
No, so?
That smeared blob is not a mistake. The imperfection is the actual design. A wobbly edge, a rotated stamp, or a slightly heavier application of paint on one side is the literal, physical signature of that child's hand at that exact stage of their motor development.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is the antithesis of a mass-produced, factory-perfect screen print. That inherent unpredictability is exactly what elevates the garment into bespoke, high-value fashion. The imperfection is the entire point of the exercise.
I love that perspective. You aren't wearing a graphic tee, you are wearing a physical manifestation of their enthusiasm. But let's say you have an older child, or you're a parent who just doesn't want to deal with the unpredictability of wet paint. You want sharp, highly structured, instant gratification. That desire leads us to the second technique covered in the guide, iron-on patchwork.
Patches are a fantastic high-impact alternative. However, before we look at the mechanics of applying them, the guide outlines a golden rule of design specifically tailored for parent-child garments.
Right.
Coordinating is vastly more wearable than matching.
It makes total sense. Very few adults genuinely want to walk around town wearing the exact same oversized cartoon dinosaur as their toddler. It feels like a costume.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
But coordinating, creating a visual conversation between the 2 distinct shirts that reads as highly intentional style, like the mom's shirt features a patch that says Big Adventure, and the child's shirt has a corresponding patch that says Little Adventure. Or you use a sun motif for the parent and a moon for the child. It's conceptually linked without being a carbon copy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of modern apparel, visible patchwork is not just a niche craft trend. It is currently experiencing a massive resurgence in high fashion and luxury streetwear.
For sure.
By utilizing iron-on patches, you are elevating a simple weekend family craft
Yeah.
and connecting it directly to much broader global style movements. You are teaching a child how to participate in contemporary fashion culture.
But successfully applying those patches to ensure they don't immediately peel off is an absolute science. The source is adamant about the settings. You must use high heat, the cotton or linen setting on your iron, and absolutely no steam.
None. Zero steam.
The physical setup for this process actually surprised me the most. The guide explicitly warns against using a standard ironing board. You are instructed to use a hard, flat table covered with a single thin towel.
The reasoning behind ditching the ironing board is purely mechanical. Ironing boards were inherently designed with a layer of squishy padding to help the iron glide over wrinkles. But when applying a patch, you aren't trying to glide. You are trying to force a semi-solid adhesive into a woven structure. When you press down heavily on an ironing board, that squishy padding simply absorbs all your downward pressure.
It is exactly like trying to hammer a nail into a pillow. You can swing the hammer as hard as you possibly can, but the pillow just caves in and gives way. The nail never penetrates.
Yes.
You need the unyielding, hard resistance of a wooden table underneath the shirt so that
Whoa.
every ounce of downward pressure forces the melting adhesive deep into the microscopic gaps of the cotton weave.
That is a perfect analogy. So you place your patch on the shirt, cover it with a thin cotton pressing cloth to protect the embroidered threads from scorching, and you press the hot iron down with significant body weight.
And hold it still, right?
Yes, you hold it completely still for 25 to 30 seconds. And this is a crucial detail. Absolutely no gliding back and forth. Gliding will push the melting adhesive out from under the edges and slide the patch out of alignment. Just press downward.
And then comes the secret weapon for true longevity. After the front cools, you turn the entire shirt inside out and you iron the exact same spot directly from the back of the fabric for another 15 seconds. You are effectively double bonding it.
That double bond technique is the critical difference between a patch that starts peeling at the corners by next Tuesday and a patch that survives 50 aggressive wash cycles. Melting it from the front pushes the adhesive down. Melting it from the back actively draws the adhesive completely through the cotton fibers.
Okay, so we have successfully navigated the chemistry of the canvas. We have beautifully stamped apples and perfectly bonded coordinating patches. You are standing in your kitchen feeling like a DIY streetwear genius.
Naturally.
But how do you prevent these miniature masterpieces from completely disintegrating the second they hit the washing machine? This brings us to the final, and according to the guide, the most frequently skipped phase: preservation and care.
For the fabric paint, the absolute, non-negotiable final step is heat setting. If you fold that shirt up and throw it in the wash without heat setting it, your stamp designs will crack, flake, and fade into oblivion almost immediately.
Ouch!
Yeah, heat setting is the thermochemical process that permanently fuses the colored pigment polymers to the cotton fiber molecules.
But patience is required. The source states emphatically that you must wait for the paint to dry completely, ideally overnight or a strict minimum of 4 hours. Why the long wait?
It is entirely about residual moisture. Even if the surface feels dry to a light touch, water might remain trapped deep in the fibers. If you apply a blazing hot iron to damp paint, that trapped water instantly boils and turns into steam.
Oh, that sounds bad.
It is. That steam has to escape, and as it forces its way out, it aggressively bubbles and ruptures the smooth finish of your paint job. The paint must be bone dry to the core.
Once you have achieved that bone-dry state, you turn the garment inside out, place it face down against a pressing cloth, and press a hot, dry iron over the back of the stamp design for 30 seconds. That thermal reaction locks the pigment in forever.
Right.
But the ongoing laundry rules matter just as much as the initial set. You have to wash these garments in cold water, always inside out to protect the surface from abrasive friction on a gentle cycle, and air dry them whenever possible.
Highly recommended.
And then we hit the biggest rule of all, printed in bold: absolutely no fabric softener. So what does this all mean? Why is fabric softener framed as the ultimate enemy of custom apparel? We were told to skip it in the pre-wash, and we are commanded to skip it in the ongoing laundry cycle. What is it actually doing inside the machine?
It helps to understand what fabric softener actually is. It isn't just making the water softer. It is an active chemical agent that deposits a slick, lipid-based film over the entirety of the fabric to reduce static friction. In the pre-wash phase, as we discussed earlier, that greasy film actively prevents your paint or your patch adhesive from ever reaching the porous cotton fibers. But the danger doesn't stop there.
It gets worse.
It gets worse. Even after your shirt is completely finished and heat set, pouring fabric softener into your regular weekly laundry cycle is highly destructive. Those deposited chemicals actively target, degrade, and eat away at the solidified adhesive bond of your iron-on patches over time. It chemically breaks down the structural integrity of the work you just spent your weekend doing.
That is endlessly fascinating. It isn't just a gentle suggestion to preserve colors. It is basically a chemical warfare warning.
Literally.
So to wrap up everything we have unpacked today, yes, eventually the physical shirts are going to fade, children inevitably grow, and cotton eventually wears thin. But the memory of that 90-minute Saturday afternoon, standing around the kitchen island, chopping up apples, carving potatoes, and making an absolute mess together, that memory does not fade. The real value proposition here isn't adding another generic garment to your closet. It is adding a rich, deeply personal layer to your family's story.
And beyond the memory, you are gifting your child the profound, empowering realization that they possess the agency to physically create the things they wear and use, rather than simply consuming whatever is placed in front of them.
That is a powerful takeaway. And looking over all these diverse techniques, the stamping, the patching, the curing it, leaves me with one final unmentioned thought for you to ponder.
Let's hear it.
The guide briefly mentions that once you master these basic skills on P-shirts, you can easily expand them to canvas tote bags or heavy denim jackets. Imagine for a second if you kept those exact same household stamps. You keep that specific wine cork, or you deliberately cut a new Apple star every single year.
Oh, I like where this is going.
And you use those same stamps on different, progressively larger items as your child grows. In year one, the Apple star on their tiny shirt is a wobbly, smeared little blob. By year four, they are creating a deliberate, repeating pattern on a tote bag. By year seven, they are stamping a perfectly spaced, multicolored constellation onto the back of a denim jacket.
Wow.
The gradual, visible improvement in their stamping precision wouldn't just be a fun craft project. It would actually serve as a permanent, wearable, chronological archive of their developing fine motor skills. It takes a simple $15 weekend activity and transforms it into a tangible, physical timeline of their entire childhood.
That is an incredible way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
You are turning a t-shirt into a living, breathing archive of their development.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the unexpected depths of DIY fashion. We always love exploring the hidden mechanics and psychology behind these topics with you, and we warmly invite you back for our next exploration. Until then, go look in your pantry, grab an apple, grab some fabric paint, and see what kind of timeline you can start creating.